Des, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Benno?
Good, fine, thank you.
Nice to see we arrived at the same point here.
We're here in Victoria on the old E&N railway, and we're looking at the old CPR rail car that hasn't seen traffic for a long time.
Yeah, I just kind of touched the handle back there just to see if it still moved. So my name is Des.
I'm Benno. Hello.
And thank you for joining us here. Benno and I are going to talk about how we got to this stage, not just Benno and I arriving here, but how the corridor is in the position that it is. And we're hoping to give you a little bit of background to help people understand a little bit more about why we got here.
Yeah. So we'll talk about two main topics today. We'll start with some railway economics, and then we'll talk about some land rights.
So we hope you enjoy the journey that you're going to come along and have some fun with us. Thank you.
All right, Des, so we're approaching the end of the current day E&N here in Victoria. You know, it's kind of an invisible place. You used to be able to see where it went. It actually back then went into downtown Victoria over the bridge.
The old Blue Bridge.
And the new bridge, but the new bridge didn't take the railway anymore. They just cut it off right here. So in 2012, even then, there was no anticipation that the rails would go into Victoria, or that a lot of the rail yards would be used. And so the rail has kind of disappeared. Oh, what'd you think? Look at that.
Well, it makes
This
if
is
there's
a relic.
no maintenance, and here's just sticking out with one of those spikes on the hole in the track. Let's put that out of the way here.
It brings up a great question, you know, like why no maintenance, right? And there was no profit. The island, right, it just doesn't have a lot of track. It's only about 300 kilometers. Modern railways, modern freight need something longer to make it economical compared to trucking, right?
I had read somewhere that it's 800 kilometers is kind of like the minimum to recoup costs and start to be profitable, and 300 kilometers is less than half of that.
Yeah, so Canadian Pacific, which bought the E&N in 1905, they're a national long-haul company, so they started losing interest already by the 1980s, and they wanted to get out. And so they leased to Rail America, and Rail America wasn't making any money. And I think part of it too is because Vancouver Island is isolated geographically. It's not tied to any other railway networks.
Right.
And in terms of like the traffic, we have about not even 1 million people.
Most of them live down here.
So so every year you looked at the traffic per kilometer, it just kept decreasing, and it got to a point where even Via Rail, which is the Canadian passenger company, they were subsidizing the service towards the end.
Yeah.
So by 2011, no maintenance had been put forth, and it wasn't a surprise. Everybody knew that, well, it's not even safe anymore, so they stopped all the rail service. Other than a little portion in Nanaimo, there's a bit of, they kept that going, but that's just a few kilometers of rail use. And a lot of infrastructure was removed. And, you know, something similar happened in Newfoundland, which is an island as well. So they're geographically separated. They didn't have a lot of tracks either, about more than here, about 800 kilometers. And they had low population density, just like Vancouver Island. And so by the 1980s, that whole network stopped. And we're facing the same challenges here as they had there decades ago.
Yeah, so this isn't a unique thing to Vancouver Island. You know, when you say it like that, I suspect there's probably every island that you run into, they've got similar issues.
Right.
Yeah. So I guess from the economics, it's no wonder why there's kind of, I keep hearing this, no business case behind it for a company to come in and run either a freight or a passenger service. I mean, there's a lot of work that has to be done.
Yeah. So without a business case, no private companies are interested. So Canadian National Railway, Canadian Pacific Railway, they're not interested. The short haul companies aren't interested. So we've reached a point where we're going to the government to ask for funding. And we're going to the government to say, can you restore the railway? You know, we would have to put brand new infrastructure, tracks, ties, everything. And both the federal and provincial government are looking at this and saying, well, you know, we'll help you, but where's the business case? Where are the other companies who want to also participate? And there just aren't any.
Which is why the Minister of Transport basically said this corridor is owned and operated by the province of BC, and that's how they look at it. And there's no funding that's been set aside for any restoration of rail service or even any repair to these rail lines. And as we talk about it, it kind of makes sense. And yet people get frustrated, but that makes sense to me. If these are tax dollars, are you going to put them into something that is going to cost more tax dollars than you're going to get back? And there's no company willing to step up. And that reminds me of a former Premier John Horgan, who was my MLA. He was very much in favor of restoring rail, especially to the West Shore where I live, and getting a light rail or some kind of commuter rail operating. But by the time he became Premier, I think it was around 2018, he started to change his tune and talk about there's no business case behind that. And by 2022, it was really controversial at the time, but he had said just the cost of establishing or reestablishing commuter service to the West Shore was astounding. And he was of the opinion that the vision he had 15 years before that is probably just not achievable. And here's a guy who wanted to have rail. By the time you become Premier, you're now privy to all sorts of information. Right. That's probably kind of the information that led him down the path to making those very public statements. And
that's light rail, which is it's a cheaper solution than heavy rail, which is what we used to have years ago, and which now we don't anymore.
So the economics is there. That's why we're at this stage, so to speak. Right. So I guess the other thing we want to talk about is the corridor itself and the districts and the First Nations that are along that corridor. Mm-hmm. And that's another hurdle, so to speak, to get to a point where we can make use of the corridor. And I guess that's the next part we'll talk about.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Right. It's not just economics, right? There are other land rights involved. Yeah. Why don't we go to another setting and we can show the audience exactly, what we're talking about.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay.
Let's make our way there.
Let's go. Right. Thank you. We are in Esquimalt. We're standing right close to the border with the Esquimalt First Nation.
And that leads us to our next topic about shared ownership of the corridor and the nations and the regional districts, which I think is very important and something that I don't know if enough people know about.
Mm-hmm. Do you know why the trail and the railway deviate?
Yeah, actually, I do. When I used to work down there, we were walking that trail, and the desire was to put it beside the track all the way down in this direction. But the Esquimalt First Nation wasn't interested in having that go through their land, which they're totally entitled to. It's unceded territory. So what's happened is they've come up with a good plan and deviate around right here. And the trail goes up and around First Nations territory here in Esquimalt, and then it joins up again on the other side. So this was a way to come together and find a way to continue up with the path that met with the First Nations desires and met with everybody else's desires, or at least in this case, the Capital Regional District. So great solution.
How do First Nations, how do they get their voice heard nowadays?
Yeah, so that's one of the things that the corridor, the province, they've all been working on this. And when the train stopped in 2011, it wasn't much longer before, just north of Nanaimo, the First Nation there, the Snanaas, put in a lawsuit in 2015 saying without rail running, which was the reason for the corridor,
Right.
they would like their land back.
Yeah.
So they've done it, and a number of other nations have requested the same thing. So that's kind of where we're at right now. With regards to Snanaas, by 2023, decisions were made and their land was given back to them. That unceded territory was reverted back to their ownership. They lifted up the rails and they put a trail. And it wasn't that we didn't know that was going to happen.
Yeah.
Because back in 2020, they were asking publicly, how about a level, accessible, paved trail that connects communities and brings people together, promotes recreation. And so you can kind of see where they were going.
Right. And they're not the only ones who are asking for this, right? So the ICF has 14 First Nations.
Yeah.
In addition to the regional districts. We've got some colorful background here. And so we have a lot of stakeholders, right? And each one has their independent path to what they want to do, right, with the corridor.
Yeah. And it's very complicated. People talk about that. It's not easy to determine with all that ownership where you move ahead. But back in 2023, at one of the Corridor Foundation's meeting, 5 of the First Nations came together, and I'm going to read exactly what they had said. But they wanted the ICF to say the ICF was stepping away from the fantasy of resuming rail activities and move forward in negotiating a new path for the rail line to explore what else is possible, which sounded very much what the Snanaas was doing in 2020. So this is 3 years later. But unfortunately, for the First Nations in that case, the motion wasn't supported.
Right. So there's been a lot of contention. And I guess the ICF, right, it was back then, it was always our hope to bring the railways back, right? All the railway assets were given to them to then bring the railway back. But as time has passed, the landscape has changed completely.
Yes. And that's kind of where we're at right now.
Are there any examples like this where First Nations in other areas of the world are also fighting for the right to use their land that's theirs?
Yeah, funny. There's lots of rail trails in North America and around the world, and a number of these do touch on the same issue. Matter of fact, in Washington State, just across the straits there, Ron Allen, he's the tribal chairperson for the Jamestown S'Klallam tribe. He talks about the benefits of a rail trail that they participate in. Again, it's an old abandoned railway that they've turned into a rail trail. So the Olympic Discovery Trail is a project that they're really excited about because in his words, it's about increased tourism and the business benefits and the cultural opportunities he sees for their First Nation.
So nobody imposed this on them. This is what they decided to do with the old rails.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense for them. They rent e-bikes from there, and they have an opportunity to have these interactions with people who are visiting from all around the world. It sounds a lot like what the Snanaas tribe is talking about and the benefits. So it's not just here on Vancouver Island. We see these same opportunities in different regions, and that's a really great success story for that particular First Nation in Washington State.
Okay. Now up here, it seems it's very complex because we have so many stakeholders at place. Has the government actually tried to get a common vision among these different groups?
Actually, the government has provided $18 million. This is the province of BC to find this common vision for the corridor itself. As a matter of fact, there's a number of studies that are being done. Some are going to continue, but the Cowichan Valley Regional Districts study came out earlier this year. There's a lot of good information in there, a lot of notable points, but I want to make sure I'm referring to one because this one really caught my attention. It said amongst the other notable points was this. With the corridor no longer being used for rail, the First Nations with bisected reserves have a legal right to the reversion of these lands. So it's kind of inevitable that they will get their lands back. And so now we've got to find a way, how do we preserve the corridor with
Mhm.
everybody benefiting and finding something that we know we can protect in a way that'll help us in the future. And I think that's
Yeah.
where we're going.
This is all fairly new. Like we're trying to get everybody's voice in place. And it's probably something new for the ICF too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and what's interesting is that the last ICF CEO,
Mm.
Larry Stevenson, when he left in 2024, he talked about this because I think he could see where it was going. It's
Yeah.
pretty clear.
Okay.
He talked about a new vision for the corridor and finding a way to preserve it, which is where we are now. It's the corridor that's valuable, not necessarily rails or trails, but preserving the corridor for potential future use. It's the same way the province talks. It's the same way the federal government talks. It's the reasoning behind that $18 million.
Yeah.
It's about partnerships and a common shared belief in preserving and utilizing this corridor.
Can you mention what the 18 million is about?
It's for studies so that all the various stakeholders can look at the corridor, study it, come together and find out, what is going to be our common vision as we determine the future of the corridor.
And it's still in progress, right?
Yeah. So Cowichan Valley has done theirs, but there's a few other that are in progress or about to be started. And it's a good point you make that if people are interested and they want to be involved, then you go to your local regional district or your First Nation and you make your voice heard.
Yeah.
You participate in those studies and those surveys so that you have a say, because this corridor is all of ours. It's not just the ICS corridor. It's not just a particular regional district or a First Nation. It belongs to all of us. And we have a say in how that gets utilized in the future.
Des, this has been quite a journey, talking about the railway economics and talking about land rights.
Yeah.
And the economics for sure is, all written in history, right? On how the railway had to be donated to the ICF. I mean, they got some tax benefits, but there were no other companies that wanted to buy it.
Right.
Basically had to be given away.
We talked about the history, that this isn't a unique situation on Vancouver Island. We see it in Newfoundland. We talked about that.
Yeah.
Some really great information. I want to thank everybody for coming along this
Thank you.
journey with us. I think it leads us to a very good point. You were talking about the economics, and that's really what's important here. And I'm going to quote a person. I want to make sure I get this right.
Yeah.
His name is James P. Crowley, and he was a former consultant to CN and CP and BC Rail on this particular corridor. He worked extensively on commuter rail and worked on the SkyTrain. So really an expert in this field. And these are his words about the corridor. Until the day comes that economics justify a commuter rail system that can be operated safely and efficiently, the best use of the E&N Corridor is a place to walk your dog, perhaps ride your bicycle.
Right. That's great. Well, thank you, everybody. And we'll see you in a future video.
Cheers.
Cheers.